sandwiches in case you were hungry," he said, "and even managed to get hold of a lemon for your gin and tonic." He looked at her hopefully, even though he knew he was being selfish in wanting to keep her with him for a few moments more. Rosie's expression was rueful as she regarded his suit and tie, the roses on the mantel, and the carefully arranged refreshments on the sideboard. She touched his face with light fingers. "I can see you've made a huge effort to welcome me back, Ron, but I can barely think straight after the day I've had, let alone eat anything." She feathered her lips over his cheek. "I'm sorry." Ron's spirits flagged. He'd hoped for too much from this homecoming. All his plans for a loving reconciliation had been shattered by the lateness of the hour and Rosie's exhaustion. "I could scrub your back and keep you warm between those sheets," he offered, desperately trying to rekindle the spark that had always been between them before tonight. Rosie shook her head, her eyes dull with weariness. "That's not a good idea, Ron," she said. "I'm sorry, but I need to be alone tonight." A wave of hope washed through him that there would come a night when they could be together, and he tentatively reached for her hand. "I love you, Rosie," he said, "and I'm willing to wait for as long as you need. I'm sorry you had to deal with everything on your own, but—" "We'll talk tomorrow," she replied softly, before glancing at the clock and shooting him a wry smile, for it was already a new day. "Everything is all right between us, isn't it, Rosie?" He could hear the plaintiveness in his voice and despised it, for it made him sound weak. Rosie squeezed his fingers. "Later, Ron. We'll sort it all out later." She picked up her case and turned towards her bedroom. "Good night, Ron. Drop the latch on your way out, will you?" Rosie left the room without a backward glance, and Ron felt as if he'd been cast adrift. He took a shuddering breath and reached for his army greatcoat. "Come on, Harvey. We're not wanted here." Harvey disentangled himself from his pup Monty and climbed off the couch to nudge his nose against Ron's hand in sympathy. Ron stroked his brindled head and then clumped down the stairs. The ignominious departure was not how he'd imagined things going tonight, and as he closed the side door behind him he was engulfed by a sense of helplessness and a terrible suspicion that Rosie was hiding something from him. He took a deep breath of the cool, salty air and looked up at the sky. The sea mist had cleared to reveal the first few streaks of pearly dawn light and the promise of another fine June day. But what would this day bring, and how would he cope if it turned out Rosie no longer loved him? The town hall clock struck the half-hour as yet another squadron of RAF bombers took off from Cliff Aerodrome, accompanied as always by their night fighters. The war and the rest of the world were carrying on oblivious of the turmoil in his heart, and although he knew that his troubles were nothing compared to what was happening in the world, it didn't lessen his anguish. "Come on, Harvey," he said softly to the lurcher sitting at his feet. "There'll not be much sleep to be had now. Let's go to the seafront." Harvey yawned and shook himself before reluctantly following him down the hill and away from the comforts of beach view to the promenade. Cliffehaven was still asleep except for those working the night shift on the factory estate and the soldiers manning the big guns along the shore. But the skies over France glowed with a false red dawn, and the sounds of the distant booms and crumps of bombs were carried across the water in the stillness. Ron moved within the darker shadows cast by the remaining buildings that lined the coast road, where the tram used to run day-trippers back and forth. There was no curfew, and he wasn't using a torch, so he was perfectly within his rights to be out here. But his old pal, Sergeant Bert Williams, was known to prowl the town at all hours, and Ron wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone. He sat on a stone bench set within the sturdy Victorian shelter which had survived a bomb blast and bullets, with only a few scars to show for it. Reaching into his greatcoat pocket, he pulled out his pipe and spent some minutes filling and lighting it whilst a disgruntled Harvey sprawled beneath the bench with a stoic sigh. Ron tried to rein in his turbulent emotions as he looked gloomily beyond the coils of barbed wire and heavily mined shingle to the concrete tank traps which were strung in an ugly line across the bay. Despite the continuous roar of the RAF planes and the distant sounds of warfare, the sea was calm, the early light turning it into a sheet of molten silver, which gently undulated.